China. Look outside, you have China ships all over the place. You have Russian ships all over the place. We're not letting that happen. We're not letting it happen.
China's been very good to Jamaica, and China's been a very good infrastructure development partner. We benefited from Chinese investment and Chinese loans, particularly during the period of time when there was a global recession, 2008 to 2010. I think the U.S., I mean, there is always the fear of Chinese influence in the region.
Why does Donald Trump want China out of Jamaica? Jamaica is the focal point of a global power struggle between two of the world's most powerful nations, the United States and China. One person who made his stance crystal clear is Donald Trump.
Brothers and sisters, I hope you're all doing fine from wherever you're watching me from. Now, there is a crisis in the Caribbean, and more specifically, there is a crisis in Jamaica. Now, the Jamaican people are raising concerns of most of their beaches being auctioned to American tycoons and Chinese tycoons. Now, there is a problem, and Jamaica is being scrambled by these two powerful factors. Now, these are the US and China. Now, China has been doing business with Jamaica for the longest time, and most Jamaicans have been complaining because China has been taking over the country, and this does not look good with the people in Jamaica. Now, in the recent days, Donald Trump and the administration of the US have been showing interest in taking over the Caribbean and maybe supplying goods to those countries. Now, this is not sitting well with the people in Jamaica because it's really bringing a crisis, and this is the crisis of conflict of interest. So let's watch this video, then have a very quick discussion at the end of it. Thank you so much.
But a large part of that is the attention the United States pays to its backyard.
Over the last decade, China's growing presence in the Caribbean, especially in Jamaica, has drawn significant attention from global leaders. For Donald Trump, this expansion into the U.S.'s strategic backyard raises red flags. Jamaica, with its critical location and growing ties to Beijing, has become a key point of contention in Trump's broader efforts to counter China's global influence. This extended presentation explores why Trump perceives Chinese influence in Jamaica as a threat, delves deeper into his administration's stance, and examines the broader geopolitical implications for the U.S., Jamaica, and the region. Chinese state-owned enterprises have financed and executed massive projects, such as the North-South Highway and the modernization of Jamaica's ports. The Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, has formalized China's partnership with Jamaica, bringing in billions of dollars in loans and investments. Situated along major maritime routes, Jamaica serves as a gateway to Central and South America. Chinese investments in port infrastructure could bolster Beijing's access to the Western Hemisphere's trade routes, which Trump views as encroachment into U.S. territory. Jamaica's growing reliance on Chinese loans has sparked concerns over potential debt traps, where the inability to repay loans could result in Beijing gaining control over strategic assets. Similar patterns in Sri Lanka and Africa demonstrate how this influence could extend beyond economics to geopolitical leverage. Trump's stance is reminiscent of the Monroe Doctrine, the 19th century policy asserting that the Western Hemisphere is within the U.S.'s sphere of influence. Trump has openly stated that allowing China to establish a stronghold in Jamaica is akin to letting a fox into the henhouse. Trump and his allies fear that China's control over key infrastructure, such as ports and telecommunications, could enable espionage and disrupt U.S. trade routes. The Caribbean's proximity to Florida and the Gulf Coast makes it a sensitive region for American defense and surveillance operations. Trump views China's growing sway in the Caribbean as a challenge to U.S. dominance. He has criticized past U.S. administrations for dropping the ball and allowing China to step into what he calls America's turf. The Kingston Container Terminal is now partially operated by Chinese interests, raising alarms in Washington. Trump has argued that China's control over such facilities could allow for the movement of goods or even military resources without U.S. oversight. Chinese companies like Huawei have been involved in Jamaica's telecommunications development. Trump has expressed fears that these systems could be used for cyber espionage. Under his administration, Huawei was blacklisted in the U.S., with Trump urging allies, including Jamaica, to sever ties with the tech giant. Trump has highlighted China's cultural programs, such as the Confucius Institutes, as tools of propaganda. The influence of Chinese diplomacy in Jamaican politics is seen as a way to erode U.S. influence in the region. Trump has proposed increasing U.S. investments in Jamaica to outcompete China, focusing on infrastructure, agriculture, and tourism. Trade agreements with Jamaica could be designed to incentivize less reliance on Chinese financing. Trump has emphasized the importance of offering Jamaica alternative funding options through U.S.-backed financial institutions like the World Bank and IMF. Under his administration, foreign aid to the Caribbean was often framed as a way to counter China's debt trap diplomacy. Trump has called for closer ties between the U.S. and CARICOM nations.
As U.S. president, Trump was vocal about his concerns over China's global ambitions, including its growing footprint in Jamaica. But why is Trump so determined to push China out of Jamaica? What does this small Caribbean nation represent in the larger chessboard of global politics? To understand Trump's concerns, let's start with geography. Jamaica is no ordinary island. It's a gateway. Strategically located in the heart of the Caribbean, Jamaica sits on vital shipping lanes connecting North and South America, Europe, and beyond. Jamaica is also home to one of the most modern shipping ports in the Western Hemisphere. The Kingston Freeport Terminal is a key hub for trade, making Jamaica a critical player in global logistics and commerce. It's no surprise that China has been investing heavily in Jamaica, pouring billions into infrastructure like the North-South Highway, ports, and renewable energy projects. But to the U.S., these investments are more than economic. They're strategic moves in a larger game of influence. According to Trump, China is not just taking over. They're setting up shop everywhere. And he's not going to let that happen in the U.S. own backyard. Throughout his presidency, Trump viewed China as a direct competitor to the United States. For him, it wasn't just about trade deficits or military power. It was about influence, especially in regions historically dominated by the U.S., like the Caribbean. In Trump's eyes, China's growing footprint in Jamaica wasn't just a business opportunity, it was a threat to U.S. dominance in the Western Hemisphere. And for a president who championed America first, losing ground in the Caribbean was simply unacceptable. One of the most striking examples of China's influence in Jamaica is the North-South Highway. Built by the China Harbor Engineering Company, this $730 million project connects Kingston to Ocho Rios, slashing travel times and boosting tourism. As part of the deal, China received a 50-year concession to collect toll revenue, a move that has sparked debates about sovereignty and long-term economic dependency. China's involvement doesn't stop there. It has modernized Jamaica's shipping infrastructure, turning the Kingston Freeport into a key node in its Belt and Road Initiative, a global strategy to expand China's influence through trade and infrastructure. But why does Trump care so much about China's presence in Jamaica? The answer boils down to three key factors: strategic control, economic competition, and regional influence. Jamaica's ports, highways, and proximity to the Panama Canal make it a critical location for controlling trade routes. Trump feared that China's investments could give Beijing undue influence over these key assets. Jamaica's bauxite industry, renewable energy sector, and booming tourism market are areas where China is gaining a foothold, challenging U.S. economic interests. By funding massive infrastructure projects, China is winning hearts and minds in Jamaica, potentially shifting political allegiances in a region the U.S. has long considered its own sphere of influence. Under Trump, the U.S. ramped up its presence in the Caribbean. Programs like the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative and USAID provided funding for public safety, education, and renewable energy in Jamaica. However, these efforts often couldn't match China's large-scale infrastructure investments. In comparison, China gave Jamaica $2 billion in infrastructure, ports, and energy, while the U.S. gave $619 million in development aid and trade incentives. The numbers reveal the challenge. While the U.S. focuses on security and governance, China is reshaping Jamaica's physical landscape. According to Jamaica's Prime Minister, Jamaica welcomes partnerships with all nations as long as they align with the country's vision for sustainable development. Jamaica's leaders are navigating a complex balancing act. While they embrace China's infrastructure investments, they are also working closely with the U.S. to maintain trade ties and regional security. This delicate diplomacy reflects Jamaica's broader Vision 2030, a strategy to achieve sustainable development and economic growth. So, why does Trump want China out of Jamaica? The answer lies in a mix of strategic control, economic rivalry, and the fear of losing influence in a region crucial to America's interests. But for Jamaica, the question isn't just about choosing sides. It's about charting a path that secures its own future. What do you think? Should Jamaica lean toward the U.S., embrace China's investments, or find a way to work with both? Let us know in the comments below.
The IMF. Now, most Jamaicans are following this process as best they can with trepidation, thinking that the IMF will impose certain conditionalities, which will degrade significantly the human security of the people in the society who can less afford to be degraded. Now, we also know the US is very influential in the international institutions, in its governance and decision making. Is there any plans for the United States government to assist Jamaica in not just navigating those conditionalities, but in terms of assisting Jamaica in creating a safety net through maybe inputs from the World Bank and the Inter-American Development Bank here in Washington?
Well, Ambassador, certainly the United States is always in dialogue with IDB, with the IMF. We met with the Minister of Finance, and we have regular meetings with the Minister of Finance and dialogue. And we are aware that many of the decisions that have to be taken will perhaps be very, very difficult. And we understand that there needs to be safety nets for the population. Of course, we cannot dictate what the financial institutions determine that they do, but we can assure you that we will work, and we will continue to work on education programs, on youth empowerment programs that will perhaps help mitigate any of the tough medicine that would have to take place as these new agreements are being hammered out. And I want to say that there is the recognition on the part of the Jamaican government that some tough decisions will have to be made and have to be taken.
Very good. I wanted to go ahead and bring our viewers in. We've received many dipnote questions on today's topic. Barbara from Jamaica writes, can the U.S. government consider putting programs in place that extend funding to the Caribbean's creative individual and industries?
Well, let me just say that we have a very rich exchange in terms of the creative arts, in terms of Jamaicans who travel and visit the United States to perform, in terms of U.S. citizens who come in. We've had for the last 20 years the Blues on the Green with a wonderful variety of artists that is such a popular activity for Jamaica. And we have our educational exchanges through Fulbright. Jamaica, we're happy to say, boasts the largest number of Fulbright alumni in the Caribbean, so we're very proud of that. And we also have worked closely in terms of creativity. Our Patent and Trademarks Office works with the Jamaica Intellectual Property Office to help make sure that the Jamaica brand and all are protected. Now, though there are some laws in Jamaica on the books regarding intellectual property, sometimes the enforcement is a little bit lax. So we need Jamaica to step up to the plate to help all of us a little more on that creativity.
Well, I appreciate that point very much, Ambassador, because this is mutual. It's not just one side doing what. We're talking about doing things that are of mutual benefit and interest to both countries. And in this particular case, Jamaica stands to benefit significantly from its proprietary interests in its Jamaica brand. You mentioned the education. I think you raised that. And just last year, about a year ago actually, it was in March of last year, that President Obama launched the 100,000 strong program. How is this manifesting itself in U.S.-Jamaica relations?
Well, in fact, at our Chiefs of Mission Conference, we had a discussion on the 100,000 strong. And we will be working with colleges and universities in the United States. We'll be working with various groups to try to get funding for this program. And we will be also working with our consular offices around the region to make sure that people understand, the officers understand the importance of this, and to really go the extra level to look at these student applicants who will be interested. So we're very excited about the possibilities, and now we're looking for making sure that we have enough funds to support Jamaicans who may be interested in continuing their studies in the United States.
You know, the value of public-private partnerships comes into play here. You know, we have another question in from Richard, who hails from the state of Maryland. The bulk of U.S. assistance to the Jamaican education sector has been in the country's kindergarten through 12th grade system. Are there plans to assist the country in the much-needed rationalization of the higher education level?
Well, frankly, at this point, our funding, which is basically through U.S. Agency for International Development, is at the lower levels because we have learned that the literacy rate has been less than it should be. So that's where we're putting our concentration at the moment. We do not have plans at this time for the tertiary level education.
How about making it easier for Jamaicans to obtain student visas to study at the tertiary level here in the United States?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, Ambassador, our consular officers are sometimes challenged because we do have instances where there are people who are less honest in what they're going to be doing in terms of their statements. Even their grade point averages, sometimes there are challenges there in terms of their authenticity. But I can assure you we have an extraordinarily good Consul General in Jamaica, and he makes sure that our officers do go the extra mile to ensure that students who are going for legitimate training will get those visas.
Ambassador, on a personal note, I must say this. When I qualified for a student visa over 40 years ago, what I had to qualify with, I wouldn't even be allowed into the door of the U.S. Embassy in Kingston today, because the rules and regulations have changed significantly. Many of our professionals and politicians back in Jamaica came to the United States on student visas and studied here, and went back and are contributing to the development of the country. Many of these students, I can assure you, could not have qualified for student visas today based on the new criteria. And this is something that gradually gets more difficult. And this is one of the things that we are really concerned about in terms of U.S.-Jamaica relations and how that can be improved.
Well, Ambassador, your concerns are certainly legitimate. I think we all know that our world today is vastly different than when you and I were growing up. We know that, for example, the costs of going to school simply are greatly increased today than they were before. And so therefore, I think the consular officers rightly need to be sure that they take that extra look, because we want the students who come to the United States to succeed. We want them to have the resources that they need and the support so that they will succeed in their studies and bring those talents and skills.
Michael from California writes, how is the U.S. prodding the Kingston government to investigate and prosecute bias-motivated crimes, and will the upcoming annual human rights report mention an improvement or setback for our LGBT concerns in Jamaica?
Well, as the
massive deficit with Mexico, and we help Mexico a lot. They're essentially run by the cartels, and can't let that happen. Mexico's really in trouble, a lot of trouble. We are inheriting a difficult situation from the outgoing administration, and they're trying everything they can to make it more difficult. Inflation is continuing to rage, and interest rates are far too high. And I've been disappointed to see the Biden administration's attempt to block the reforms of the American people and that they voted for. We had a landslide election. We won every swing state. We won the popular vote by millions and millions of people. Nobody even knows how many people, millions. And they're still counting in some areas. You know, they're still counting the vote in some areas. Can you believe this? What a place. What a horrible place. One of the things we're going to do is we've got to fix the election so that we get honest counts and they get done by 10 o'clock in the evening or something thereabouts. They have places where they're still counting votes. President Biden's actions yesterday on offshore drilling, banning offshore drilling, will not stand. I will reverse it immediately. It'll be done immediately. And we will drill, baby, drill. And we're going to be drilling in a lot of other locations. And the energy costs are going to come way down. They'll be brought down to a very low level. And that's going to bring everything else down. That's what caused it to go up, along with the ridiculous spending on the Green New scam. All this money, trillions of dollars. It's like throwing it right out the window, what they're doing. And they're trying to spend so much now. They're just taking money and giving it to anybody that wants it for any project at all, if it's certified under the Green New scam. And they don't work, and it's too expensive. And, they told me that we're going to do everything possible to make this transition to the new administration very smooth. It's not smooth because they're doing that. They're playing with the courts, as you know. They've been playing with the courts for 4 years, probably got me more votes because I got the highest number of votes ever gotten by a Republican, by far, actually, by a lot. And, we had a great election, so I guess it didn't work. But even to this day, they're playing with the courts. They have their friendly judges that like to try and make everybody happy on the Democrat side. It's called lawfare. It's called weaponization of justice, and it's happened at a level nobody's ever seen before. The Panama Canal is a disgrace, what took place at the Panama Canal. Jimmy Carter gave it to them for $1, and they were supposed to treat us well. I thought it was a terrible thing to do. It was the most expensive structure ever built in the history of our country, relatively. It would be the equivalent of substantially over $1 trillion today. We lost 38,000 people. Think of it, 38,000 people, they died from malaria, mosquitoes. They were unable to stop the mosquitoes. They paid people 5 times more to take the job. Many of those people died. We gave it away for $1. But the deal was that, they have to treat us fairly. They don't treat us fairly. They charge more for our ships than they charge for ships of other countries. They charge more for our Navy than they charge for navies of other countries. They laugh at us because they think we're stupid, but we're not stupid anymore. So the Panama Canal is under discussion with them right now. They violated every aspect of the agreement, and they morally violated it also. And they want our help because it's leaking and not in good repair. And they want us to give $3 billion to help fix it. I said, well, why don't you get the money from China? Because China's basically taken it over. China's at both ends of the Panama Canal. China's running the Panama Canal. And they come to see this Biden, this guy who should never have been allowed even to run for president. Of course, she shouldn't have either, because that never happened. I had to be 2 people, not 1. But they want $3 billion to fix the Panama Canal that's run by China and makes a lot of money, China. One of the most profitable structures ever built, because you have ships lined up back to Florida, frankly, and they just keep going through, and the numbers are staggering, $500,000 to $1 million a ship. And they took it away from us, meaning we gave it to them for $1. But not going to happen. What they've done to us, they've charged us, they've overcharged our ships, overcharged our Navy. And then when they need repair money, they come to the United States to put it up. We get nothing. Those days are over. We are not treated well, as you know, by Canada. Canada is subsidized to the tune of about $200 billion a year, plus other things. They don't essentially have a military. They have a very small military. They rely on our military. It's all fine, but, you know, they got to pay for that. It's very unfair. I have so many great friends. One of them is the great one, Wayne Gretzky. I said, run for prime minister. You'll win it'll take 2 seconds. But he said, well, am I going to run for prime minister or governor? You tell me. I said, I don't know. Let's make it governor. I like it better. But no, something's going to have to be done. Same thing with Mexico. We have a massive deficit with Mexico, and we help Mexico a lot. They're essentially run by the cartels, and can't let that happen. Mexico's really in trouble, a lot of trouble. Very dangerous place. And we're going to be announcing at a future date pretty soon. We're going to change, because we do most of the work there, and it's ours. We're going to be changing, sort of the opposite of Biden, where he's closing everything up, essentially getting rid of $50 to $60 trillion worth of assets. We're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, which has a beautiful ring that covers a lot of territory. The Gulf of America, what a beautiful name. And it's appropriate. It's appropriate. And Mexico has to stop allowing millions of people to pour into our country. They can stop them. And we're going to put very serious tariffs on Mexico and Canada, because Canada, they come through Canada too. And the drugs that are coming through are at record numbers, record numbers. So we're going to make up for that by putting tariffs on Mexico and Canada, substantial tariffs. And we want to get along with everybody, but, you know, they have to, it takes two to tango.
Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No.
And can you tell us a little bit about what your plan is? Are you going to negotiate a new treaty? Are you going to ask the Canadians to hold a vote? What is the strategy?
Yeah, I can't assure you. You're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this. We need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military. I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that you'll have to do something. Look, the Panama Canal is vital to our country. It's being operated by China. China. And we gave the Panama Canal to Panama. We didn't give it to China. A big part of the problem was Russia for many, many years, long before Putin said you could never have NATO involved with Ukraine. Now, they've said that. That's been like written in stone. And somewhere along the line, Biden said, no, they should be able to join NATO. Well, then Russia has somebody right on their doorstep, and I could understand their feeling about that. But there were a lot of mistakes made in that negotiation. And when I heard the way that Biden was negotiating, I said, you're going to end up in a war. And it turned out to be a very bad war. And it could escalate. That war could escalate to be much worse than it is right now.
They can never join NATO.
Well, my view is that it was always understood. In fact, I believe that they had a deal, and then Biden broke it. They had a deal which would have been a satisfactory deal to Ukraine and everybody else, but that Biden said, no, you have to be able to join.
Hi everybody, Kelly Shaw Williams here, Jamaican journalist and TV news anchor, and I'm here to tell you just what's happening in the United States since Donald Trump took office yesterday. So yesterday was the inauguration, and Donald Trump is officially the president of the United States. So here are 6 things you should know, just in case you don't know. So since he took office, Donald Trump has been signing a lot of executive orders, or as they are also called, executive actions. So, number 1, he has issued pardons to the almost 1,600 people responsible for the January 6th insurrection. So, you remember in 2021 when he had those people storming the Capitol after Donald Trump lost the election? Well, those who have been charged, the charges will be dropped, and for people who are behind bars, they will be released. 2, Donald Trump has signed an executive order withdrawing the United States from the Paris Agreement as well as the World Health Organization. 3, he has moved to end birthright citizenship in the United States. So say, for example, you have parents who are undocumented, they have a child. What obtains now is that the child would automatically be a citizen. But Trump is moving now to end that. So the legal experts are saying, I'm not an expert, are saying that this will be challenged. And some are saying that more than likely it will not make it to the Supreme Court. So I guess we'll have to watch and see what happens with this one. 4, Donald Trump has declared a national emergency at the southern border. So he's barring people, asylum seekers who are trying to enter the country. 5, he has declared that there are only 2 sexes in the United States, male and female. And how can I forget, last but by no means least, 6, he has granted an executive order putting a pause on the TikTok ban for 75 days while they work out some solution. So a lot of issues that we have to keep an eye on and just to see how they unfold, especially with this TikTok issue. What will happen after 75 days? We don't know, but at least people now have 75 days to use the app and to figure out, what they're going to do after TikTok. So there you have it. I'll try my best to give you more, a synopsis of what's happening in the United States.
Hello, brothers and sisters. I really hope you are doing well from wherever you're watching me from. Now, there has been a lot of tension in the Caribbean and more specifically in Jamaica, Guyana, and some other countries in the island. Now, we know whatever has been happening in the US and the US government and the leadership of Donald Trump has been going after its allies, and many allies are now trying to rebel against the US government, and they are now trying to find new partners. That includes China and more specifically Russia. Now, it is for this reason that we are seeing so much obsession of the US government with the Caribbean. Now, you might be asking yourself, why should a very big country like the US be obsessed with some small countries in the island? Now, your guess is right as mine that they are looking for the market of their goods, and they are looking where they can be selling their goods and to grow their economy. We've seen Donald Trump saying that he wants to acquire Canada, the Panama Canal, and all these other countries that he claims he wants to put, he wants to add them to be states of the US. Now, the question has always remained, what is the sovereignty of our black countries, whether in the Caribbean or in Africa? Is anyone coming to put an influence and maybe try to auction our own countries, our own beaches, and our own resources? You might be confused of whatever is going on. Now, let me give you a brief history of whatever has been happening in the Caribbean. We all know that many countries in the island of the Caribbean are dominated by black Africans. And it is for this reason that it is highly associated with the slave trade that took place 300, 400 years back. Now, many black people who couldn't make it or who couldn't afford life in the US and in most of the European countries moved back to the Caribbean to actually have these countries in place. And they accumulated in large numbers, and you all agree with me that West Indians were there. So when black people were moving to that part, they joined with the West Indians, who later on moved to other parts of the world. Now, later on, we have the Chinese and other groups of people who came to live in the Caribbean. And we have the Muslims and other Arabs and other groups of people who moved there to live with the black people who were there, because we all know the history of black people and how much they are welcoming. Now, while this was happening, now countries like the UK, which are formerly colonized these island countries and which were guiding, like they were in control during the slave trade, because they had so much power in there to control black people and taking them from those places to go and work in the US and other places. Now, they got interest because these islands were growing bigger and bigger. And for this reason, they wanted actually to regain back their powers. Like, even if these countries in the island might say that they're independent, but in a way, they must still rely on countries like UK, Spain, and many other countries. Now, this has actually happened to date, in that you go to Jamaica, you still find, however much people are trying to say no, and people are trying to hide the truth, but the truth still remains that Jamaica is under the leadership of United Kingdom, that the king himself is the direct leader in the UK, in Jamaica. So while all these things are happening, we must remind ourselves of the history of these countries in the Caribbean. Now, after all these things, countries like Jamaica, Russia, China, and the US have always shown interest in the Caribbean. You know why? The Caribbean has always had a good market for the people, because the Caribbean is not access. The Caribbean is an island, and for this reason, they must have goods supplied to them. They must have phones, food, and all other stuffs. They must have cars, so they must have weapons. So there was need for these Caribbean countries to sign deals with other governments which manufacture all these products. And most deals from the Caribbean were being signed by China, because China was providing goods at a very affordable price. And so the goods from China could easily be bought from the market by the people, because it was affordable. And the goods from the US were kind of high. The prices were hiked. So it is for this reason that China found a so good market in the Caribbean. And this has always brought conflict of interest between the Chinese government and the US government. There is a time the US ambassador to Jamaica was crying out for help, and he was saying that his calls were being recorded by the Chinese government to know whatever was going on in Jamaica. However much the complaint was never substantiated, but I like to say that that's very wrong. It's breaching security details, and it's breaching the privacy of a person. And if you imagine someone at the top level like that can still be recorded, and maybe the information be used otherwise for their own reasons, you imagine whatever is happening to the larger group of people who are not that very much influential, but just go to the market and buy any phone that they can afford and come back to use. So this one has been going for a long time. And you all know that every president in the US has always been associated with the Caribbean leaders. He or she, now every leader who has come to power, just from Obama did even set up a special caucus for the leaders in Jamaica and the Caribbean to meet with the leaders from the US. Now, they have always had interest, and China's always had interest. But the question is, what is the position of Jamaica in the market? Do they go to sign deals that benefit them, the people, or they are going to sign this because they want to impress China, or they want to impress the president of the US? This is the time I feel like we black people, we black folks, the African diaspora should stand still. They should actually speak truth to power. unless otherwise, never let your own countries be sold out. Those who live in the Caribbean must, I say, and I do repeat this, they are very lucky because we have black people who are in the diaspora, but they live in countries where they are being oppressed. And they are citizens of those countries. They grew up and were born in those countries, but they are still being oppressed. So if you are in the diaspora and you come from the Caribbean, you must be so grateful. And you must never leave your prime minister or whoever is in government, the president or whoever is in government, to actually let your country be sold back to colonization. You all know the effects of being colonized again. You know the effects of neocolonialism, which is happening in Africa. So we should stand by the truth and in the truth and speak truth to power and say no to anyone trying to auction anything. Now, there is another time Jamaicans were crying out. People from Grenada were crying out. And people from St. Kitts were crying out that their beaches were being sold to Chinese tycoons and to American tycoons. And they could not gain access to their own beaches. They could not gain access to some of the hotels and some of the places in their own country. Just like the way Orania in South Africa denies access to black South Africans. And you ask yourself, if these are black countries and we have governments in place, why are they allowing such insanity to take place in our own countries? Why do they allow such things? So this is a wake-up call to all Jamaicans who are watching this and to all Caribbeans who are watching this. This is not the time to laugh around. This is not the time to attack your brothers and sisters for saying the truth. This is it. That this must be the time that you people must wake up. You people from the Caribbean must wake up and make sure your governments are put in check, that no one is going to auction any part of your country. It is the only pride that you have, that I come from Jamaica, I'm a Jamaican, I have land in Jamaica. So when they take you back to colonization, you are going to lose everything that you have, and you understand that. Because slavery still happens in some parts of this world. Now, you go to the Arab Emirates, you go to Saudi Arabia, slavery still takes place. So we do not want to see these things happening again and again. So this must be a wake-up call to all of you who are watching this video. This is the time not to allow the US to take control over your own island. This is not the time to allow China, just because they're supplying you with cheap products, to actually take your own beaches, take your own lands, and take control of your own country. Say no, and elect leaders who are very visionary, leaders who are going to take you, not to take you back to colonization, but leaders who have a very good vision for the future of your kids and for the future of your own life. Thank you so much for having taken the time to watch this video. If it's your first time on this channel, please consider subscribing, sharing this video, like and comment. Let's meet in the next episodes, brothers.